Good afternoon, guys, wherever you are in the world. I have Marco from Europe, and he's is a entrepreneur, and he helps clients maximize impact through innovation rooted in authentic identity. So whether you're an entrepreneur in the corporate world, a CEO, he's going to talk to us all about leadership, senior executives, growth, innovation, identity. And I'm really happy to have him on and discuss his thoughts and ideas. Marco, welcome.
Welcome, Christopher. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Briefly introduce yourself, and I'm excited to dive into your work that you do.
Hi, I am Marco Houwen. I'm from Luxembourg, Europe, little country in the middle of Europe. 51 years old, 52 actually. Oh, I always omit the year. And yeah, serial entrepreneur since something like 30 years and had different iterations and sheddings of myself over the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. And what led you to start your company, your business? And you started Zen Entrepreneur. And what do people like clients when they first meet you? What do they come to you for help with? What pain or are they trying to fix, or what are they trying to aspire to?
Yeah, so the first part of your question, why or when or how or I started as entrepreneur, that's
Yeah.
actually after a very intense tech and internet career. I literally woke up somewhere 2017 and I felt, is this it? Is this what I wanted to achieve? Is this the impact I wanted to leave to the world? And don't get me wrong, we're talking about Europe and we're talking about the smallest country in Europe, Luxembourg. So we were not as successful as you can be, or financially as successful as you can be in the US, but we had our shares of successes. And in this little country, I was known as one of these rare, really pushy entrepreneurs. But the challenge was, it didn't give me, in a sense, it felt meaningless. So that was all there, but I didn't feel that there was any meaning and that, yeah, that I give something to the world. So that's where I decided to find another way. So it took me years to get that, but that's how it started. And then as entrepreneur was a logic out of that. And to your last part of your question, why are people coming to me? This is different. So I work with companies, and in companies, it's really about very tangible problems. I have no clue how to retain my talent, and I only don't find it. And then we start to talk about the real reason, which is corporate culture. And then we start, okay, why is that? Because people who are talent who joins the company cannot really link to the company. They don't feel like they are taken serious, that they feel belonging in that environment. And so that's where the whole identity discussion starts. We'll probably dive into that later. And then on the personal side, like personal leadership or coaching, purely coaching, advising side for C-level, it's really this very often. It's too much. I cannot handle. I am stuck. And nobody sees that outside. It's really interesting how many people I can work with who are outside and outwardly seem very successful. People successful, happy, or whatever, but they are really feeling stuck. And so they need a way out of that to get back into loving what they do, getting into not only the financial but also into the happiness success. So I always say happiness is linked with financial success and my very own success, which I have to define. Both are creating happiness.
Interesting. And you touched upon a lot of things such as identity, and we'll talk about building identity in the age of AI and spirituality. One thing that I love to ask about entrepreneurs that have reached the pinnacle, but then they suffered from this dilemma of, is this it, or they're just disconnected. A lot of people, they're running away or trying to mask their childhood wounds, or they're trying to run and chase some standard of success that is defined to them by, could be like here in the West, it's defined by the media and like culture and parents. How do you achieve peak performance through inner peace?
You went directly to where it is important to go, because it is not something which starts because of the last merger which didn't work or of the big investor who came in and who is kicking my ass in the board. It's not about, these are not the problems which are creating this kind of situations where you feel stuck. They are rooted very deeply in our upbringing, I call it the external conditioning we are getting from iOS from 0 to 6. It's really about our parents, and then it starts friends and so on, and then after 18, it becomes our spouses, it becomes our relationships, our business relationships. But the challenge is the one from 0 to 6 is the one we cannot easily change because that's where we were a sponge. Our brain literally takes everything up, and we get planted beliefs, which nobody actually does really by purpose, but it's just happening because some people are telling stuff and you just grab it. And so we have that in ourselves. And so that's the one side. And the other side is, and you also touched at it, it's the link to parents. I would love to take the thesis of saying there is no or very few entrepreneurs out there who are not having a daddy issue. In a sense that we all, it's not negative. I have it, I had it too. I worked through it. It's really deep work. Proving the ones who are my idols that I'm better than them. Which is an incredible driver and which makes people very often very financially or very successful.
Mm.
But as I said, above success is happiness. So it's like, how happy are they? That's the question. So how do you achieve or maximize peak performance through inner peace is already by accepting the fact that, well, you need to introspect. Solutions are not outside. And the problems are actually not outside. They are just surrogates to whatever we project outside. So to accept that we need to introspect and to look into it. I just yesterday kicked off an coaching with a very successful AI, actually very young, 35 years, young AI expert, has a great tool, amazing what he does. And he's totally at the end of his rope because it's way too much. Why? Because it mounts up and people don't get taught how to get rid of these thoughts. What are the thoughts they should hang on to? What are the thoughts they should let go of? What are the thoughts which are empowering them? What are the thoughts which are disempowering them? And so this becomes an unsurmountable heavy block of whatever. I have always used this visual where there's a big stone lying on your head like that. And it's like, it really creates that environment. So it starts with introspecting. What is it I really want? What is it I really need? What is it I really want to look at? Where do I lie myself to? We are gods in lying to ourselves. Telling all these stories just to stay on track.
Mm.
And that when you start to go into that, then you start to see where you can go. So there are obviously tools you can use, but there is no change which was ever done without introspection.
Interesting. So then the other question I have is this idea of a lot of organizations. I think the best organizations here that you see are ones that have identities, like strong identities. If you
Yeah.
look at like Google or Apple or Amazon, like these are very identity driven.
Yes.
But then we have this age of disruption where it's like nothing is permanent anymore. Companies can get wiped out in a matter of days sometimes. So how do you build identity driven organizations in this constant stage of change?
This is a perfect question because that's a big challenge. And I love to talk about identity in a way. And let me take an example of what I call a static identity, which everybody knows. So just go fast through it. Kodak. Kodak was a static identity. Why? Because in 1975, I don't know the name of the guy anymore, he invented digital camera. And the management told him, we are a company of chemists. So obviously they didn't write that down, but that was their perceived identity. They could have had an identity of, we are creating lasting moments for people, because that's what they do with pictures. But they never asked themselves that question. And it cost them one of the most successful business in history. So not asking yourself who you are and who you want to become is the worst mistake you can do. You can take Blockbuster as another example. We are delivering movies through our shops in wherever. Yeah, great. Netflix was different. They always send it by snail mail, and so they always send experiences to people. Great. They then did it through the internet. Here we are. Who is there? So the identity you choose and you give yourself, and crucial, the biggest challenge is when a company doesn't have one consciously. They have one because it's always there, but it's lingering. They don't know it. So how can you change something you don't know? So in the fast evolving world, changing world, the first step is, who am I? Who are we as an organization? The good, the bad, and the ugly. Just be honest. I do workshops around that. Those are not fun times. Because you really look at stuff and people are debating and starting to fight each other. But at the end, there is a baseline. And that baseline, that's where we start from. Then we go into the classics. Values. What are we standing for? What are we really standing for as an organization? Then we go into, why do we do this? Beyond money. What is the purpose of what we are doing? And then we go back to who do we want to become on the basis for what we stand for and why we do what we do beyond money. Then we have that circle. We create that and then review that regularly. That's why I call it growth identity. It's something which grows. It's not static. It cannot be static. That's a big challenge. When we talk about identity, and there's also many identitarian movements and so on, that's all about, I want to keep what I have now. That doesn't work. But that doesn't mean that we don't have to rely on the deep reasons and the deep who we are on what we do. Because when we have done that, when we have that growth identity defined, then we can easily talk about strategy. We can easily talk about pivots. Because we know who we are. We know what we can stand for. We are not jumping from one opportunity to the other, which might just feather everything out, all our resources out, and we will just go out of business. We can decide who we stand for. One of the amazing examples is Nokia. Most of the people think Nokia is dead. Yeah, Nokia sold their business, their smartphone, no, obviously not, their mobile phone business to Microsoft. But today they are still connecting like more than 50% of the 5G backend worldwide. They are doing, I think it was $1.7 billion of net margin. Just looked that up a few days ago. What was there since the 80s? What was there very short in identity? Connecting people. They are still connecting people. So I think for me, and I think a company in these incredibly changing worlds cannot allow itself not to ask these questions.
Yeah. Interesting. And because I really love this idea of what you described as static versus growth identity. The other question is this idea of intelligence. And traditionally, before it was IQ, EQ, all these different intelligence, the
Yeah.
gardeners, but now we have artificial intelligence. And you talk about aligned intelligence, integrating all of them in leadership. Enlighten us.
I would love to. Thank you so much for giving me the forum. In 1625, Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. And it was really good because we came out of the Dark Ages, so we needed somebody who gets some factual thinking in. But it created 400 years of relying 100% on our IQ, on our cognitive intelligence. And we created, especially in the West, not so much in other parts of the world, but especially in what we call, I don't know if that still exists, the Western world, we created totally driven, cognitive driven environment. And that's fine, and it works somehow. And the biggest measure is my IQ. I have so much. I don't know. I never did a test, so I cannot tell you how much I have. I'm too old to do one. Probably is not good now. So whatever. But having said that, now comes AI. Around comes AI, which has exactly the same attributes like cognitive intelligence. Comparing, analyzing that all the attributes of cognitive and artificial intelligence are the same. It's just one little difference. It's 10,000 or 100,000 times faster than you and me. So I say, and I predict that, and I see it coming. I see these discussions with my customers. I say humanity is in the biggest identity crisis ever. Because now, shit. Hey, I thought I was the cleverest one in the room. No, you're not. Because I have this icon of ChatGPT, and then I have a Claude AI, and yes, so we have different AIs now. We have even not one. We use different one. So, but who are we then? And how can we continue to be relevant? And that's where we need emotional intelligence. And David Goleman did that really good and created a book in 1995 to really bring that research done together. So to understand our emotions and to manage our emotions and others' emotions. That's really great. But the question remains, why? So that's where we need spiritual intelligence. We need to go that level deeper. And it's not about religion. It's about linking to our spiritual intelligence. Purpose is one capacity of spiritual intelligence. Sacredness is it too, but most people are not thinking so much about sacredness. But there are other ones. There's so many different attributes, discernment. Yeah, well, there are 22 in the framework I'm working with. And so we need to cater to these questions. If we're not catering to the question, why am I here? Where do I go? What I do? If we're not catering to this, I was like, who am I? Sorry, we're not catering to these questions. We cannot really be in contact and in communication with everybody around us, because the deep communication goes through these layers. And coming to aligned intelligence is your thumbprint or soul print between your cognitive, your emotional, and your spiritual intelligence. That's why I call it aligned intelligence, and it's cool because it's AI. So yeah, so that's why I call the system Santra AI, not artificial.
Yeah, interesting. Now I know what's really interesting is because this Gardner theory of multiple intelligence, because the school system, it was only linked verbal and math, but now the seven other, now we have artificial intelligence. What are the biggest challenges leaders face in aligning cognitive, emotional, spiritual, and artificial intelligence?
Overcome the ego of thinking they know it all.
Interesting.
Because what's happening, and now this is obviously characterized in the character, like it's exaggerated, but in that sense that it's the ego which needs to go. We cannot drive the world the same way we do. We see the remnants right now in all the stories we read on news, but that's like the remnants of what's happening. If AI really takes over, there's already 3 years. 2 years ago, there was AI CEOs running companies. That was 2 years ago. This was like even not kindergarten in comparison to what we run now. We need to get into deep communication with ourselves and with others. That's what we can do. And we obviously, AI can emulate emotions. We saw that in the movie Her, which is really a beautiful use or showcase of how that can happen. But it is there where we can find ourselves. And as entrepreneurs, it's in the collaboration with all my people that I can really create. Because since a long time, we were told, be sure that you're not the most intelligent guy in the room. But now you are for sure not. It's even not possible. You cannot even think about it. Because you're not. The highest IQ is not competing. So what's left? Left is ourselves. The connection.
Interesting. How can people find out more about you and connect with you? And if they align with this spiritually aligned approach to leadership, how can they learn from you?
Yeah, they can reach out on zentrepreneur.com or just through my LinkedIn and just book a quick call or just reach out through message. That would be great. I would love it to talk to more people about it.
Excellent. And again, keep up the great work and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Christopher, for having me.